Marble does not lend itself to deception. It is heavy, brittle, and unforgiving of error, which is precisely what makes one particular distortion so remarkable. A sculptor spends years studying the human body so that stone might convincingly imitate flesh. And then, deliberately, he gets the proportions wrong. Not from error. Not from haste. But because he understood something about distance, about how the eye behaves when looking upward, that almost nobody standing in front of his finished work would ever need to know. In the heart of Florence stands a figure so familiar that most visitors barely pause to examine it properly. They see the calm face, the coiled tension, the famous nudity that scandalized and then defined an era. What they rarely notice is that the man before them is built wrong. Michelangelo's David was never meant to be seen this way at all. Stand close to the statue inside the Galleria dell'Accademia, where it has resided since 1873, and an odd unease sets in. The head is too large. The right hand, hanging loosely at David's side, is noticeably oversized, its veins and tendons rendered with such anatomical precision that art historians have nicknamed it the strong hand. Compared with the rest of the body, these proportions do not match the elegant naturalism Michelangelo demonstrated elsewhere in his career. At over 5 meters tall, this is already an imposing figure, yet up close, something in the geometry feels subtly off, almost as though two different scales of measurement were used on the same body. For centuries, casual viewers have assumed this was simply a stylistic choice, or perhaps a flaw in an otherwise flawless masterpiece. It is neither. It is the residue of a plan that was never carried out, frozen permanently into the stone. To understand why, it helps to know what Michelangelo was actually carving toward. Commissioned by the Opera del Duomo, the body responsible for the upkeep and decoration of Florence Cathedral. The statue was intended from the outset for a specific architectural position, high upon one of the cathedral's external buttresses, nearly 25 meters above street level, silhouetted against the open sky. Viewed from that height, the human eye naturally foreshortens distant objects, and a figure carved with strictly accurate proportions would appear to shrink and distort the further it traveled from the ground. Renaissance sculptors understood this problem well. Michelangelo's solution was to enlarge the head and right hand just enough to compensate, ensuring that from 80 feet below, David would appear correctly proportioned, commanding, and entirely convincing. He was not carving a man. He was carving an optical illusion engineered to function only from one impossible vantage point. That vantage point never happened. In January 1504, a committee of Florence's leading artists, among them Sandro Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, and Filippino Lippi, was convened to decide where the completed statue should actually go. Their deliberations, recorded in surviving Florentine archives, reveal genuine disagreement about whether to honor the original cathedral plan at all. Hoisting a 17-foot marble giant onto a rooftop buttress was a logistical nightmare, and David's symbolic power, a small figure triumphing over a much larger threat, had taken on new resonance for the young Florentine Republic, recently free from Medici rule and wary of larger rival states. The committee chose instead to place the statue at ground level, outside the Palazzo della Signoria, the seat of civic government, where it would stand for over 3.5 centuries as a political emblem rather than a religious commission. The marble itself carries its own quiet history of survival. The block had been quarried decades earlier and handed first to the sculptor Agostino di Duccio around 1464, then briefly to Antonio Rossellino, both of whom abandoned the work, leaving it scarred and partially hollowed. Florentine records refer to it afterward simply as the Giant, a flawed, oversized slab considered too compromised for serious use. When the commission eventually passed to the 26-year-old Michelangelo in 1501, he inherited not a pristine block but a damaged one, riddled with old tool marks and a strange narrowness running through its center. Vasari later wrote of the achievement with characteristic admiration, framing it as proof of Michelangelo's almost supernatural ability to perceive a finished form trapped inside imperfect stone. Whatever the precise truth behind that romanticized account, the surviving block, the documented prior failures, and the eventual masterpiece are historical fact, verified through Opera del Duomo records and subsequent archival research conducted by Florentine institutions. The evidence for the buttress scale theory is not speculative reconstruction. Art historians, including scholars associated with the academia and the broader field of Renaissance studies, point to the documented original contract specifying cathedral placement, combined with direct anatomical analysis of the statue's proportions, which align closely with calculations for upward perspective correction. A 2003 to 2004 conservation project undertaken by the Opificio del Pitre Due, Florence's renowned restoration institute, involved extensive cleaning of accumulated grime and analysis of the marble surface, offering restorers an unusually close opportunity to study these proportional choices firsthand. Their findings supported what scholars had long suspected. The exaggerated extremities were not artistic license but precise calculation, abandoned mid-purpose when the statue's destination changed. Beyond the engineering puzzle lies a deeper question about what David represents. Earlier depictions by Donatello and Verrocchio showed the biblical shepherd after his victory, often standing triumphantly over Goliath's severed head. Michelangelo chose a different, tenser moment, David before the battle, sling draped over one shoulder, brow furrowed, weight shifted in coiled anticipation. Scholars frequently note this psychological choice as a deliberate departure, emphasizing resolve and inner conflict rather than celebration. For a republic that saw itself as perpetually threatened by larger, wealthier powers, an underdog poised for confrontation, rather than basking in victory already won, carried obvious political resonance. The oversized hand, in this reading, becomes more than optical correction. It becomes a visual statement about the instrument of decisive action, the part of the body about to determine history. What makes this story endure is not merely the cleverness of Renaissance geometry, but what it reveals about intention versus outcome. Michelangelo solved a problem that the world never asked him to solve in the way he expected. His calculations were correct, his foresight remarkable, yet history rerouted his masterpiece entirely, placing it somewhere his careful adjustments were never required. The statue succeeds anyway, not because the illusion functions as designed, but because audiences have spent 5 centuries instinctively forgiving its strangeness, sensing power in those exaggerated hands without ever quite articulating why. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden in the marble. Even the most meticulous plans can be overtaken by circumstance, and sometimes what survives is not the artist's original intention, but something stranger and more enduring. A beautiful miscalculation that the world decided to love regardless.